The wind scours the frozen steppe. A world is thawing. Here, where thousands once thundered across the permafrost, only a single, small herd remains, their heavy footfalls sinking into the wet, unfamiliar snow. The great ice is in retreat. The winters are no longer what they were. And without knowing it, these last animals are walking toward their own oblivion. This is the story of how the mammoths vanished. Their disappearance was not the work of a single day, not one cataclysmic event, but a slow unraveling. A story written in 1,000 small changes, 1,000,000 forgotten choices that ultimately extinguished one of the most incredible creatures the earth has ever known. To comprehend their end, we must first journey back to their beginning. Who were these titans of the ice? For us, they are creatures of legend. Colossal, shaggy elephants with impossibly curved tusks, forever lost in a landscape of snow and frost. But for millennia, for the early humans who shared their world, the mammoth was not myth. It was the rhythm of daily existence. They were close relatives of the modern elephant, a diverse family with some species larger, others smaller. The most famous, the woolly mammoth, stood as tall as 3 meters at the shoulder, a fortress of life against the cold. Its body was draped in a thick coat of brown hair, a dense undercoat for warmth, and long, coarse guard hairs to shed snow and ice. Beneath this pelt lay a thick layer of fat, an essential insulator against the brutal, unending chill. Their ears were small and rounded, a crucial adaptation to conserve precious body heat, and their tusks, magnificent arcs of ivory that could exceed 4 meters in length, were not merely for display. They were tools, used to sweep aside deep snow, exposing the dry grasses, mosses, and roots that sustained them. They moved in matriarchal herds, mothers, calves, and young males, a slow, deliberate procession across a harsh but familiar world. A world of biting wind, of frozen plains stretching to immense, empty horizons. And they were not alone. Around them moved other giants, the last of the Pleistocene megafauna. Woolly rhinoceros tore at the frozen vegetation. Enormous steppe bison grazed in vast herds. Scimitar-toothed cats and towering cave bears were the apex predators in this cold yet vibrant wilderness. The last great ice age was an epic of colossi. For the scattered bands of humanity, the mammoth was everything. It was a walking mountain of resources. A single kill was a monumental victory, the difference between survival and starvation through a long winter. It was meat to be smoked over precious fires, preserved for the lean weeks ahead. But it was so much more. From a single mammoth, our ancestors harvested a future. Tendons were braided into cordage. Hides, thick and insulating, were stretched over frameworks to create the first true shelters against the unforgiving elements. And the bones, the very skeleton of the great beast, became the architecture of their lives. In the heartlands of what is now Ukraine and Russia, archaeologists have unearthed entire dwellings, astonishing structures built from the colossal bones and tusks of the fallen, a testament to the profound connection between hunter and hunted. Their world of ice and giants is gone, vanished as completely as the morning frost. What remains are their bones, locked in the frozen earth, and their ghostly echo in our own story. They are a testament to a planet in constant flux, a reminder that even the mightiest can be erased, not by a sudden roar, but by the persistent, relentless whisper of change. Deep within the limestone wombs of Europe and Asia, etched in charcoal and ochre, the ghosts of giants still walk. Upon the silent, undulating walls of ancient caves, their forms appear in flickering torchlight, massive, shaggy beasts with tusks that curve towards the heavens. These are not merely the renderings of prey. They are portraits, studies, and stories carved in stone. They reveal that for early humanity, the mammoth was not just a source of food and bone, but a living monument, a creature to be watched, understood, and woven into the very fabric of their burgeoning culture. For the people of the Pleistocene, these titans were as fundamental to their world as the horse or the cow is to ours. And yet, even giants can fall. The world of the woolly mammoth was a kingdom built on ice. For as long as the ice held, so too did their dominion. During the last great glacial maximum, colossal ice sheets, miles thick, smothered a vast portion of the northern hemisphere. The oceans were diminished, their waters locked away in frozen reservoirs, exposing immense tracts of land. Where today there is open sea, there were once sprawling, arid plains, the Mammoth Steppe. This was a vast, wind-scoured corridor of cold, dry grassland stretching from the Iberian Peninsula across the heart of Eurasia and over the Bering Land Bridge into North America. It was a world of immense horizons, ruled by an eternal winter. But the Earth is never still. Its climate is a restless engine, forever in flux. Approximately 12,000 years ago, the Great Ice Age began its slow, inexorable decline. The planet's thermostat began to rise. This was not a sudden cataclysm, not a change that could be measured in a single day or a single year. It was a creeping transformation, unfolding with agonizing slowness, century by painstaking century. The glaciers, those frozen titans of the north, began to weep, their meltwaters carving new rivers and swelling the seas. The great frozen steppes, the mammoth's boundless larder, began to transform. The tough, dry grasses and sedges that had fueled their colossal bodies for millennia started to thin, to recede. In their place, a new world encroached, a wetter, greener world of marshy woodlands, dense boreal forests, and unfamiliar flora. For many animals, this was not a crisis, but an opportunity. But the mammoths were specialists, masterpieces of engineering for a world that was vanishing. Their dense, shaggy coats, their layers of insulating fat, their very metabolism, all were perfectly tuned for the profound cold. They were ill-equipped for a planet that was growing warmer, wetter, and more enclosed. We can imagine a herd in this moment of profound transition. The calves struggle to find enough of the right forage as the ancient grasslands shrink. The matriarchs, relying on ancestral memory, lead their kin along migration routes that no longer exist. Where there were once solid frozen plains, there are now impassable barriers. Swollen rivers, vast, murky lakes, and deep, grasping mud that could trap even the most powerful bull. Their territories, once continental in scale, were fracturing, shrinking into isolated pockets. They were forced to share these dwindling prime habitats with a host of other herbivores, competing for every mouthful. This changing climate brought more than just hunger. It unleashed invisible armies. Parasites and pathogens, once held in check by the sterilizing cold, began to thrive and spread. Milder winters meant longer, warmer summers, a breeding season not just for the mammoths, but for the insects and microbes that plagued them. For any single mammoth, one year herds grew smaller. Genetic diversity withered. Isolated populations, trapped on emerging islands or in shrinking valleys, simply blinked out of existence, leaving no trace. And into this world of crisis stepped another protagonist. A creature small, agile, and deceptively frail, yet armed with a mind of unparalleled cunning. Man. As the climate changed, so too did humanity. Their tools grew deadlier, their strategies more sophisticated. Flint spear points became more refined, capable of piercing thick hide and finding vital organs. Hunting parties became larger, more organized, capable of executing complex plans over vast distances. They had learned to read the land, to use its features to their advantage, to set ambushes in narrow valleys, and to exploit the psychology of a panicked herd, driving them over cliffs or into treacherous bogs. The mammoth was now caught in a fatal pincer movement. On one side, a world that was dissolving beneath its feet, its very foundations melting away. On the other, a predator that was becoming lethally efficient. They were titans of the ice, cornered by the coming of the thaw and the rise of a new intelligence. Their fall was not a single event, but a long, slow elegy written across millennia, a story of a world that changed too fast for its most mightiest of creatures, are ultimately subject to the subtle, relentless forces of a planet in constant motion. For even the greatest of giants are but temporary tenants of the earth, their reign measured not in strength, but by the forbearance of the ice and the patience of time. To face a single adult mammoth was to confront a force of primeval nature. A mountain of muscle and shaggy hair, it was an adversary whose power was absolute. A single, thundering charge, propelled by a body weighing several tons and guided by colossal, curving tusks, was more than enough to extinguish the life of any human hunter who dared stand in its path. Yet the true art of survival is not about confronting strength, but exploiting weakness. And the mammoth's greatest weakness was the herd itself. Once panic took hold, their immense power became their own undoing. A well-chosen precipice, the treacherous surface of a frozen lake, or the suffocating embrace of a hidden mire could transform a stampeding herd into a tomb of its own making. The very momentum that made them invincible became the agent of their destruction. We possess no single piece of evidence, no proverbial smoking spear, to prove that humanity alone hunted these giants into oblivion in the space of a few generations. The story is more complex, a convergence of devastating forces. But an undeniable pattern is etched into the deep history of our planet. Where modern humans arrived, the great beasts, the megafauna, often began to vanish. It was not mere coincidence, it was a lethal combination. As the great ice sheets retreated, the mammoth's world began to shrink. Less suitable habitat meant less food. This ecological pressure, combined with the relentless, intelligent hunting of a new apex predator, created a perfect storm. With every herd that vanished, a thread in the great tapestry of life was severed, and a piece of the planet's future was extinguished forever. There is a subtle detail in their decline that makes their story all the more fragile. The inexorable mathematics of population. When a species begins its long retreat into the shadows, it rarely disappears from everywhere at once. Instead, it clings to existence in small, isolated pockets, last-stand refuges in corners of the world that remain, for a time, favorable. For the woolly mammoth, some of these final sanctuaries were remote, wind-swept islands in the high Arctic, such as the lonely expanse of Wrangel Island. Here, in this frozen fortress, the mammoths outlived their continental cousins by millennia. Long after the last mammoth had fallen on the vast plains of Eurasia and North America, a unique population continued to walk these shores. But they were changed. Insular dwarfism, a consequence of their limited environment, had sculpted them into smaller versions of their ancestors. They were a testament to life's remarkable ability to adapt, a final, defiant echo of a bygone age. But survival in such a gilded cage comes at a terrible price. To live in small, isolated groups is to gamble with extinction. Fewer individuals means a shallower gene pool, a fragile library of genetic diversity. Defects, diseases, and inherent frailties can spread. Threnage becomes terrifyingly precarious. A single brutal winter, a new pathogen carried on the wind by migratory birds, or the arrival of the first humans in their boats could be enough to erase them from existence. A final storm, a sudden famine, and an entire unique population could be snuffed out in a single season. In the end, even these silent islands emptied. The last chapter of their long history was written not with a roar, but with a whisper. The very last mammoth on Earth died without any knowledge of its own significance. It did not know it was the final note in a symphony that had played for hundreds of thousands of years. For that one creature, it was simply another harsh winter, another struggle for survival that was ultimately lost. For the story of our planet, it was the closing of an entire epoch. And yet, the mammoths have not vanished completely. They have not been erased from the memory of the Earth itself. The deep, unyielding cold of the North that shaped their existence became their final curator. The permafrost of Siberia and Alaska, a vast, frozen vault, has preserved not just their bones, but their very bodies. From the perpetually frozen soil, almost perfectly intact mammoths have emerged, revealed by the forces of a warming world. They are not skeletons, they are entire creatures. Their skin, their coarse hair, the contents of their last meals still resting in their stomachs. Even their eyes, which once gazed out across the frozen steppe, have been found, still recognizable after 10,000 years of slumber. Some were discovered by children at play, others by hunters tracking game, or by miners searching for ivory along the crumbling banks of Arctic rivers. At times, the ground simply gives way. The ice melts, and from a wall of earth, an enormous, shaggy leg appears, a limb that last took a step in the Pleistocene. For scientists, these frozen time capsules are a library of lost information. From the undigested plants in their stomachs, we learn the precise flora of their environment. From the growth rings in their tusks, we can read the story of their lives, the years of plenty and the seasons of hardship. From the chemistry of their hair and teeth, we can reconstruct the climate of their lost world. And from their DNA, we can trace their lineage, compare them to their modern elephant relatives, and understand the very code that brought these magnificent beasts to life. Each mammoth found encased in ice is more than a specimen. It is a tangible connection to a world we can never visit, a concrete piece of by the very ice age that defined it, reminding us that even the mightiest can vanish, and that the past is never truly gone. It is merely sleeping, waiting beneath our feet. This was not a myth, not a monster from a forgotten tale. It was a living, breathing creature that walked the earth. It knew the sting of relentless cold, the gnawing ache of hunger, the sharp terror of a predator's shadow. This was an animal of flesh and blood, of ingenuity, frozen steppe. It protected its young, shielding their small, shaggy bodies from the biting wind, guiding them through treacherous snows. Its story is one of survival, of endurance against a world of ice. And yet, there is one final, astonishing chapter to their story. A chapter that involves us directly, unfolding not in the past, but in our present. It is a story written in the most fundamental language of life itself, the double helix of DNA. Trapped within permafrost, preserved for millennia in fragments of bone, muscle, and hair, is the mammoth's genetic blueprint. Today, we possess the extraordinary ability to read that code, to resurrect their entire biological instruction manual from the depths of time. In laboratories across the world, a profound question is being pursued. Scientists are meticulously mapping this ancient genome, seeking to understand if it is possible to engineer a new beginning. Not to create a perfect replica of the woolly mammoth. That creature and its world are gone forever. The vision is something different, a biological echo. The goal is to imbue its closest living relative, the Asian elephant, with the mammoth's key adaptations. To edit its genetic code, granting it the traits that once allowed these giants to thrive in the cold. A dense, shaggy coat of hair, a thick layer of insulating fat, and blood uniquely equipped to carry oxygen in freezing temperatures. The ambition is to birth a cold-resistant elephant, a proxy species to be released into environments that mirror the Pleistocene grasslands. But many others fear it is a dangerous game of hubris, a reckless manipulation of nature with consequences we cannot possibly foresee. They warn that we are toying with the very definition of life, creating an organism that belongs to no time and has no natural place in the modern world. The debate itself, however, illuminates a deeper truth. For tens of thousands of years, our ancestors stood in awe of these creatures, reverence, of magic, of storytelling. Today we are rewriting the mammoth not on stone, but within the glowing architecture of supercomputers, translating its essence into binary code and sequences of adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. The shift from drawing a beast to editing its very being reveals the almost terrifying extent of the power we now wield over the planet and its inhabitants. The story of the mammoth's demise is not just a curiosity from a distant epic. It is a stark and urgent parable for our own time. They did not vanish because of a single catastrophic event. Their extinction was a slow, grinding process, driven by a lethal combination of factors. The climate warmed, relentlessly shrinking their icy habitat. The vast grasslands gave way to forests, diminishing their food sources. And the pressure from a new, uniquely intelligent predator, our own ancestors, grew ever more intense. The herds fragmented, shrinking and growing isolated, until they became too small, too fragile to withstand the mounting pressures. This fatal synergy of climate change, habitat loss, and overexploitation is the precise blueprint for extinction that is now pushing countless other species toward the precipice. The rhinoceros, the elephant, the tiger, the polar bear. These are the titans of our age. Animals that seem to us as permanent and eternal as the mammoths once seemed to the people of the Ice Age. But are they? Or are they destined to become tomorrow's ghosts, their existence reduced to flickering images in a documentary, or silent assembled skeletons in the halls of a museum? If you should one day find yourself before the skeleton of a woolly mammoth, pause for a moment. Resist the urge to see it merely as a prehistoric monster, an alien relic. Look closer. Behind those colossal, curving tusks and the vast architecture of bone, listen for the echo of a life lived. See an entire herd, their breath misting in the frigid air as they moved through a blizzard. See the calves, clumsy and small, staying close to the immense protective legs of their mothers. Imagine the terror of a storm in the dead of night, the long, arduous migrations across landscapes of unending ice. That skeleton is not a trophy. It is a testament, It is the undeniable proof that even giants can be erased from the earth. And it serves as a simple, chilling reminder. Today, the fate of so many of the world's great animals rests entirely in our hands. We are the architects of their future. The mammoth will not return. Their world of ice has melted away, lost to an irreversible past. But their story endures, locked in the frozen soil, held in our museums, and encoded in our own scientific ambitions. And every time we tell it, it confronts us with the clearest of questions. What will we choose to do with the giants that still walk among us? The great sagas of history are not sealed in the amber of time. They are living narratives, echoing through the centuries. Each chronicle of human triumph and folly becomes a powerful new lens through which to view our own era, revealing the ancient patterns and hidden currents that shape our modern world. For to truly understand where we are, we must first listen to the voices of where we have been.